October 12, 1964. New Orleans. Louis Armstrong returned to the place that had saved his life 50 years earlier, the Colored Waifs' home for boys. He'd been a troubled 13-year-old when they'd sent him there in 1913. An orphan, a street kid, angry and lost. The orphanage had given him his first trumpet, taught him discipline, showed him that music could be salvation. Now, at 63 years old, Louis was one of the most famous musicians in the world. But he'd never forgotten where he started. He walked through those gates to say thank you. What he found instead was a 12-year-old boy playing his original 1914 trumpet, an instrument Louis thought had been lost forever. And what happened in that music room over the next 3 hours proved that some instruments carry more than music. They carry legacies. Before I share this incredible story with you, if you want to discover the most touching moments from the golden era of entertainment, real stories of humanity, and the unknown sides of legends from the 1950s through 1980s, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because the story I'm going to tell you today isn't just about a trumpet or a famous musician. It's about cycles breaking, legacies passing, and how one instrument can save two lives 50 years apart. Louis Armstrong's childhood was brutal. He was born in New Orleans in 1901 to a mother who worked as a domestic servant and a father who abandoned the family. Louis grew up in the back-o-town neighborhood, one of the poorest, most dangerous areas of New Orleans. By age 7, he was working, hauling coal, selling newspapers, doing whatever he could to help his mother pay rent. By age 11, he was running with street gangs, getting into fights, stealing small items from stores. On New Year's Eve 1912, when Louis was 11 years old, he made a decision that changed his life. He fired his stepfather's gun into the air to celebrate the new year. The police arrested him on the spot, shooting a firearm in city limits, disturbing the peace. At 11 years old, Louis Armstrong was sentenced to the Colored Waifs' home for boys, essentially a juvenile detention center for black children. Louis was terrified. The Colored Waifs' home had a reputation: strict discipline, hard work, no tolerance for troublemakers. When Louis arrived in January 1913, he was angry, scared, and convinced his life was over. He was an orphan now, officially. His mother couldn't care for him. His father was gone. He was alone in an institution with dozens of other lost boys. But something unexpected happened at the Colored Waifs' home. Louis found music. The home had a brass band, a small ensemble of boys who played at local events and parades. The band was led by a man named Peter Davis, a stern but fair music teacher who believed that discipline and music could save troubled children. Peter saw something in Louis, a spark, a hunger. So he offered Louis a chance. Learn an instrument, join the band, stay out of trouble. Louis chose the cornet, a brass instrument similar to a trumpet. Peter Davis handed him a battered, old cornet that had seen better days. The valve stuck. The mouthpiece was dented. But to Louis, it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever held. For the first time in his life, Louis had something that was his. Something nobody could take away. He practiced obsessively. Every free moment, Louis was in the music room, blowing into that cornet, learning scales, working through exercises Peter Davis assigned. The other boys teased him, called him obsessed. But Louis didn't care. Music was giving him something he'd never had: purpose, identity, a future. By 1914, Louis had become the leader of the Colored Waifs' home brass band. He played solos at parades. He performed at community events. And for the first time in his life, people weren't looking at Louis Armstrong, the street kid, the troublemaker, the orphan. They were seeing Louis Armstrong, the musician, the boy with the golden tone, the kid who could make a broken cornet sing. Louis was released from the Colored Waifs' home in June 1914 at age 13. He never forgot what that place had given him. Not just music, but salvation. A second chance. A reason to live. He took his cornet with him, the same battered instrument Peter Davis had given him, and he played it on street corners, at parties, anywhere he could. Within a few years, Louis was playing with professional bands. By the 1920s, he was recording albums. By the 1930s, he was famous. By the 1950s, he was a global icon. Satchmo, the ambassador of jazz, one of the most beloved musicians in the world. But Louis never went back to the Colored Waifs' home. Not because he didn't want to, but because it was too painful. Too many memories. Too much trauma mixed with gratitude. For 50 years, Louis carried that place in his heart, but couldn't bring himself to walk through those gates again. Until October 1964, Louis was in New Orleans for a concert tour. He was 63 years old, his health declining, his energy not what it used to be. But he was still performing, still traveling, still bringing joy to audiences worldwide. One afternoon, his manager mentioned that the Colored Waifs home, now renamed the Louis Armstrong Municipal Auditorium, was still operating, still helping troubled boys, still running the brass band program. Something shifted in Louis when he heard that. After 50 years, he needed to go back. Not for publicity, not for cameras, but for himself. To close a circle. To say thank you to a place that had saved his life when nobody else would. On October 12, 1964, Louis arrived at the home unannounced. No press, no entourage, just Louis, his manager, and a driver. He walked through the gates, feeling like that scared 13-year-old boy again. The building had changed. New paint, better facilities. But the essence was the same. Rows of beds and dormitories. A cafeteria. And most importantly, the music room. Louis asked to see the music room. A staff member led him down a familiar hallway. Louis could hear it before he saw it. The sound of brass instruments. Off-key scales. Beginners struggling through exercises. The exact sounds he'd made 50 years earlier. But then Louis heard something that made him stop walking. A solo trumpet. Playing when the saints go marching in. Badly. The notes were wrong. The rhythm was off. But there was something in the tone, a quality Louis recognized immediately. Passion. Desperation. The sound of a child playing like their life depended on it. Louis walked into the music room. About 15 boys were scattered around, practicing various instruments. But in the corner, sitting alone on a metal folding chair, was a small boy, maybe 12 years old, thin, with clothes that didn't quite fit. He was playing a trumpet that looked ancient, dented, scratched. The bell was slightly cracked. But the boy played it with complete focus, eyes closed, lost in the music. Louis walked over slowly. He didn't want to startle the boy. When he got close enough, Louis looked at the trumpet the boy was holding, and his breath caught. He recognized that trumpet. The dent on the bell. The scratch on the second valve. The way the mouthpiece sat slightly crooked. It was his trumpet. His original cornet from 1914. The instrument Peter Davis had given him 50 years ago. Louis stood there in shock. He'd assumed the instrument had been discarded decades ago, thrown away when it got too damaged, replaced by newer horns. But here it was, 50 years later, still being used, still teaching children, still saving lives. The boy finished playing and opened his eyes. When he saw Louis Armstrong standing 3 feet away, staring at him, the boy froze. "Hello, son," Louis said gently. "That's a fine horn you're playing." The boy looked down at the trumpet, embarrassed. "It's old. Doesn't play right. The valves stick." "I know," Louis said, his voice thick with emotion. "I used to play that exact trumpet. A long time ago." The boy's eyes went wide. You played this?" "Every single day for a year and a half," Louis replied. "That trumpet taught me everything I know." "What's your name, son?" "Marcus," the boy whispered. "Marcus Williams." Louis sat down on a chair next to Marcus. "Well, Marcus, I'm Louis Armstrong, and I used to live here, just like you, back in 1913. Marcus stared at Louis like he was seeing a ghost. "You lived here? In this place?" "Sure did," Louis said. "I was 13. Got in trouble with the law. They sent me here. And Mr. Peter Davis, the band director back then, gave me that trumpet you're holding. Told me if I learned to play it, I might have a future." And he was right. Marcus looked at the trumpet in his hands with new reverence. "This trumpet, this is yours." "It was," Louis said. "Now it's yours. Tell me, Marcus, why are you here? What's your story?" Marcus hesitated. Then, slowly, he told Louis everything. He was 12 years old. His mother had died when he was 8. His father was in prison. No other family. The state had placed him in the Colored Waifs home 2 years ago. Marcus had been angry at first, fighting with other boys, getting into trouble. But then the music teacher, Mr. Johnson, had given Marcus that old trumpet and told him to try playing. "I didn't want to at first," Marcus said quietly. "But Mr. Johnson said music could save me. Said it saved other boys before. So I started playing. And it helps. When I play, I don't think about my mom being gone. I don't think about my dad in prison. I just play, still saving lives." The boy finished playing and opened his eyes. When he saw Louis Armstrong standing 3 feet away, staring at him, the boy froze. "Hello, son," Louis said gently. "That's a fine horn you're playing." The boy looked down at the trumpet, embarrassed. "It's old. Doesn't play right. The valves stick." "I know," Louis said, his voice thick with emotion. "I used to play that exact trumpet. A long time ago." The boy's eyes went wide. You played this?" "Every single day for a year and a half," Louis replied. That trumpet taught me everything I know. What's your name, son? Marcus, the boy whispered. Marcus Williams. Lewis sat down on a chair next to Marcus. Well, Marcus, I'm Louis Armstrong, and I used to live here, just like you. Back in 1913. Marcus stared at Lewis like he was seeing a ghost. You lived here? In this place? Sure did, Lewis said. I was 13. Got in trouble with the law. They sent me here. And Mr. Peter Davis, the band director back then, gave me that trumpet you're holding. Told me if I learned to play it, I might have a future. And he was right. Marcus looked at the trumpet in his hands with new reverence. This trumpet, this is yours. It was, Lewis said. Now it's yours. Tell me, Marcus, why are you here? What's your story? Marcus hesitated. Then, slowly, he told Lewis everything. He was 12 years old. His mother had died when he was 8. His father was in prison. No other family. The state had placed him in the colored waifs home 2 years ago. Marcus had been angry at first, fighting with other boys, getting into trouble. But then the music teacher, Mr. Johnson, had given Marcus that old trumpet and told him to try playing. I didn't want to at first, Marcus said quietly. But Mr. Johnson said music could save me. Said it saved other boys before. So I started playing. And it helps. When I play, I don't think about my mom being gone. I don't think about my dad in prison. I just play. Lewis listened with tears in his eyes. It was like hearing his own story. Same pain. Same anger. Same salvation through music. Can you play something for me? Lewis asked. Marcus nodded nervously. He lifted the trumpet and began to play, When the Saints Go Marching In. It wasn't perfect. The notes cracked in places. The rhythm wavered. But there was soul in it. Real, undeniable soul. When Marcus finished, Lewis was crying openly. That was beautiful, son. You've got it. The gift. I can hear it. Really? Marcus's voice was full of hope and disbelief. Really? Lewis said firmly. But that trumpet can't help you anymore. It's done its job. Taught you the basics. Now you need a real instrument. One that works. Lewis reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. This is my manager's number. I'm going to have him send you a new trumpet. A professional one. The best money can buy. And I'm going to arrange for you to get lessons. Real lessons. With the best teachers in New Orleans. Marcus stared at the card, his hands shaking. Why? Why would you do that for me? Because 50 years ago, someone gave me a chance, Lewis said. Mr. Peter Davis gave me that trumpet and told me I could be more than a street kid. He believed in me when nobody else did. Now it's my turn to pass that along. You've got talent, Marcus. Real talent. But talent isn't enough. You need opportunity, education, support. And I'm going to make sure you get it. Lewis stood up and extended his hand. Marcus shook it, tears streaming down his face. Then Lewis did something Marcus never expected. He asked for the old trumpet. Can I hold it? One more time. Marcus handed it over carefully. Lewis held the battered instrument in his hands, feeling the weight of 50 years. The dents his own fingers had made. The scratches from countless practice sessions. The mouthpiece he'd blown into until his lips bled. He lifted the trumpet to his lips and played. Not a full song. Just a few notes. A simple phrase. But those notes rang through that music room with a clarity and beauty that made every boy stop and listen. This was Satchmo. This was Louis Armstrong, playing the same trumpet he'd played as a frightened 13-year-old orphan. When he finished, the room was silent. Then one of the boys started clapping. Then another. Soon the entire room was applauding. Lewis handed the trumpet back to Marcus. You keep this, Lewis said. Keep it safe. Because 50 years from now, when you're my age, there's going to be another scared kid in this room who needs to believe music can save him. And you're going to give him this trumpet, just like I'm giving you a new one. That's how legacies work, Marcus. We pass them forward. Lewis kept his promise. Within a week, Marcus received a brand new professional trumpet, a Selmer model worth over $800. Along with the trumpet came a letter from Lewis explaining that he'd arranged for Marcus to receive free lessons from a professional jazz musician in New Orleans. The lessons would continue until Marcus turned 18. Marcus Williams flourished. He practiced 6 hours a day. He joined every band he could. By age 16, he was playing professionally at local clubs. By 18, he'd earned a scholarship to the Berklee College of Music in Boston. He became a successful jazz musician, playing with major orchestras, recording albums, teaching music to underprivileged children. And he kept the old trumpet. Lewis's trumpet. The 1914 cornet that had saved 2 lives 50 years apart. Marcus displayed it in his home, in a glass case, with a plaque that read, "The trumpet that taught Louis Armstrong and Marcus Williams." Legacy, 1914 to 1964. Louis Armstrong died on July 6, 1971, at age 69. He never saw Marcus graduate from college, never saw him become a professional musician. But Louis didn't need to. He knew, because Louis had walked the same path. He understood that giving someone a chance isn't about seeing the results. It's about planting seeds. Marcus attended Louis's funeral in New York. He stood in the back, holding his professional trumpet, the one Louis had given him. And he played, "When the Saints Go Marching In," as Louis's casket was carried out. This time, the notes were perfect. The tone was flawless. Because Marcus had received what Louis had received 50 years earlier, a chance, an instrument, a belief that music could be salvation. In 1995, Marcus Williams donated Louis's original 1914 trumpet to the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. It sits in the National Museum of American History, in the Jazz Collection, with a detailed plaque explaining its history. 2 orphans, 2 lives saved, 1 instrument connecting them across half a century. But Marcus kept one thing. The business card Louis had given him that day in 1964. It's faded now, yellowed with age, the ink barely visible. But Marcus carries it in his wallet wherever he goes. And whenever he teaches a young musician, whenever he sees a child struggling, he thinks about Louis Armstrong sitting beside him in that music room, tears in his eyes, saying, "You've got the gift." Marcus is 72 years old now, as of 2024. He retired from performing in 2010, but still teaches music to children in New Orleans. Every year, on October 12th, the anniversary of meeting Louis, Marcus visits the old colored waifs home building, which is now a community center. He brings his trumpet, and he plays for the children there. And he tells them about the day Satchmo walked through those doors and changed his life with a simple act of kindness. Louis Armstrong didn't owe me anything, Marcus says. He was famous, rich, successful. He could have walked through that music room and kept walking. But he didn't. He stopped. He listened. He cared. And he gave me something more valuable than a trumpet. He gave me belief. Belief that I could be more than an orphan, more than a statistic, more than a lost kid. He gave me the belief that I mattered. This story reminds us that greatness isn't just measured in albums sold or awards won. It's measured in the lives we touch when nobody's watching. Louis Armstrong could have ignored Marcus, could have smiled politely and left. But he saw himself in that boy. He saw the scared 13-year-old he'd been 50 years earlier. And he acted. That's what real legends do. They don't just inspire people from stages and recording studios. They inspire people in small moments, in music rooms, in places nobody will ever hear about. Louis Armstrong changed music history, but he also changed one boy's life in a way that had nothing to do with fame or recognition. He simply gave a child the same chance he'd received. The old trumpet from 1914 saved 2 lives. Louis Armstrong in 1913, Marcus Williams in 1964. And perhaps that's the most beautiful legacy of all, not the music Louis created, but the cycle he completed. He'd been given an instrument and a chance. 50 years later, he gave another child the same gift, and that child went on to give it to others. Instruments don't just make music. They carry stories. They connect generations. They prove that kindness echoes across decades, changing lives in ways we can't predict but must trust. Louis Armstrong understood that. And on October 12, 1964, he completed a circle that had begun 50 years earlier with a different scared boy holding the same broken trumpet, wondering if life could ever get better. It did. For both of them. Because of a trumpet. Because of music. And because one man never forgot where he came from or the hands that had lifted him up when he'd had nothing.